Hi everyone, you're watching VGO 40 and this is VGO Girl, and today we are taking a look at World of Kings and we're looking at the Icewind Valley dungeon in Overlord mode. Now I'm going to be honest, I wasn't going to do an Overlord version of this dungeon because it's pretty much the same as Adventure. So if you are not familiar with the strategies from Adventure mode, please take a look at the Adventure dungeon video, and I'll put that in the description, a link to it. But when I was doing Overlord 5, I started tanking the boss for the first boss, and my group was like, "What are you doing?" And I'm like, "I'm tanking the boss." And they're like, "No, you're doing it totally wrong." And I'm going, "I've run this dungeon like 500 times. What are you talking about?" Now, I've never done it in Overlord 5 or higher, but I've done it plenty of other times, and I knew exactly what I was doing. So apparently there's very different strategies for doing this in higher levels of Overlord mode than there are in Adventure and the low levels of Overlord. So I'm just going to go over some of the basic differences and how you go about doing some of the bosses. Now, I'm not going through the whole fight, so again, if you're not familiar with the strategies for doing Icewind Dale, just look at the other videos and that will tell you exactly how to do the bosses. I'm just going over some of the differences. All right, first boss, this is the very end of the fight. You want the tank, especially if you're the tank, to pull the boss all the way to the corner where you enter this section. And the reason is the frost wizards, when you're in the corner here, it's out of line of sight for the third frost wizard, so you can kill that boss without having to take down all three frost wizards. And in this particular case, you want to stay in the corner. The tank should not move. They yelled at me anytime I even tried to take down that little tower thing or go after the frost wizards. You want to keep that boss in the corner and do not move if you're a tank. If you're DPS, go after the frost wizards and take them down. Okay, boss 2, you may think that this is pretty obvious, but I usually tank the boss a little further away from the ice. If you can see, he's standing right on top of the ice cube. For this particular one, they told me to make sure that I tank him right on top of the ice cubes. That way, when one of the DPS can go through and free the spirit, you don't have to worry about actually having to move the boss to position him. So make sure that when you are tanking him for the overlords, to really put him right on top of that ice cubes for each of the rounds. And then a DPS, if you're DPS, make sure to go over and free the spirit for the ice cube that is right under the boss. So when you get the message, don't do it before the message. Okay, moving to the third boss, this is probably the biggest change that I noticed, which I thought was really a cool change. So when you're going, before you get to the boss, change your rollback thing to Iron Will. You do not want to have the roll. See, it's right below your general attack button. Hold your finger down on that and it will bring up the menu to switch. Switch over to Iron Will, and then you'll be able to break out of those ice cubes. Okay, so here we are doing the dragon. It's pretty much the same as, again, as the regular Icewind Dale adventure, but here we're going to go ahead and do the whirlwinds, and you can see here that the whirlwinds come up and each player goes into a whirlwind to get frozen, and then you hit that Iron Will ability and you get right out. At that point, you don't even really need to worry about the ice. I think the first time through we were destroying the ice, but this time we didn't, and it seemed to go pretty well. So, you know, you don't even have to really worry about that. So this really increased, I think, the amount of time that we could spend DPSing the boss instead of having to worry about going through and breaking the ice for each person and having the lowest DPS go into a whirlwind. And honestly, it made it really easy. So that was a really helpful strategy that I found with this one. So you're watching VGO 40 and this is VGO Girl, and hopefully you found some of these changes helpful, and we will see you next time in World of Kings.